Well, I'd initially planned to record and release an entirely different video than this one, but the further into creating that video I got, the further I got into a tangent about a specific vehicle, and the more I thought, you know what, I should probably just make a video about this vehicle because it's very slept on and underappreciated, at least in my opinion. Now, I've seen the videos where somebody gushes on a particular car that's not really that well known, that people don't talk about, or, a lot of people don't know about, and then all of a sudden, the value for that vehicle skyrockets, and I don't want to be that guy. But seeing that I'm a really small creator, I don't think that I'm that convincing, and I don't think that I have that much pull. I think anybody that happens to know about this gem and loves it or plans on picking one up is probably going to be safe. So, what vehicle am I talking about? Well, I'm really talking about two generations of a particular vehicle that's always been pretty popular, but has seemingly fell off after the past decade or so. And what I'm talking about is the 7th generation and 8th generation of the Nissan Maxima. Now, if you're not familiar with these vehicles, the 7th generation Nissan Maxima was released for the 2009 model year and continued to sell until the 2014 model year, then subsequently continued to be sold as a 2014 and the 2015 model year, and then the 8th generation Maxima ran from the 2016 model year until the 2024 model year. These generations of Nissan Maximas were essentially sold as borderline luxury sport sedans, essentially the last notch up the ladder, with the exclusion of the GTR, of course, before you jumped into infinity territory. The Nissan Maxima, or as it was originally called, the Datsun Maxima, or Datsun 810, has been around since 1980. It was introduced in the 1981 model year, and I was actually able to find some U.S. sales figures from the 1982 calendar year, which would be the 1983 model year, and the 2022 calendar year, which would be the 2023 model year. And throughout that time, it paints a pretty good picture of the Maxima and its popularity over time. So sales for the Maxima actually peaked in the 1995 model year, where Nissan would go on to sell 163,138 Maximas in the U.S. Then it began to slightly decline, and by the 2003 model year, it had fallen below 100,000 sales for the year. So it kind of steadily stuck above the 100,000 sales a year before that point. And in 2003, the 2003 model year, it landed at 98,502 sales in the US, which is still a really solid number. Now, sales stayed pretty steady, but dipped below 50,000 for the 2009 model year, which would actually be the first year of the 7th generation Maxima, but I can also imagine this is because this would have been in 2008 when the financial crash was happening. From there, sales picked up a bit, jumping to more than 60,000 sold in 2010 for the 2011 model year, then leveling off to about 50,000 sold in 2014, which would have been the 2014 model year that was sold throughout 2013 and 2014, until the 8th generation Maxima came out for the 2016 model year in 2015. Now, the first year of the 8th generation, the 2016 model year, it only sold just over 40,000 units. But then it spiked to almost 63,000 in the 2017 model year and almost 68,000 in the 2018 model year. But from there, sales really started to decline rapidly. In the 2019 model year, only 42,337 were sold. In 2020, just over 35,000 were sold. Then 2021, when the pandemic was in full swing, just 18,062 units were sold. By the 2023 model year, Nissan had only sold 7,110 units total. And then Nissan dropped the bomb. The Nissan Maxima would be discontinued after 42 years. All right, so enough of the history lesson. Why am I talking about these cars? Well, it's going to be a controversial take, but I personally think the last two generations of the Nissan Maxima, from 2009 to 2024, were just underappreciated and slept on vehicles, but they were really great vehicles. At the same time, I think I know why they were so underappreciated. Initially, when you break down the 7th and 8th generation Nissan Maxima specifications, you might actually go, wow, why aren't these more popular? I mean, both generations have the beloved 3.5-liter VQ35DE V6 that was found in the Nissan 350Z and the Infiniti G35. The 7th generation Maxima had 290 horsepower, and the 8th generation Maxima had 300 horsepower. Both did 0 to 60 in less than 6 seconds, despite being big, bulky four-door sedans, and both of them were really robust and comfortable, great riding vehicles. But there's 3 parts of the formula that the 350Z and G35 had that the Nissan Maxima didn't. First and foremost, and most apparent and obvious, while the Nissan 350Z and G35 were smaller, lighter, more sporty vehicles that were often sold as coupes, the Nissan Maxima was a four-door boat by comparison. Secondly, while the 350Z was rear-wheel drive and the G35 was offered in both rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive, the Nissan Maxima was only ever sold as a front-wheel drive vehicle. But of course we know that's not an absolute deal-breaker, right? I mean, we know of plenty of fun front-wheel drive vehicles like the Volkswagen GTI, the Honda Civic Si and Type R, the Hyundai N vehicles, and of course the Mini Cooper. But lastly, and likely most shocking, while you could either get a manual or a sporty, well-tuned automatic for the 350Z and G35, the 7th and 8th generation Maxima were only ever offered with one transmission choice, a Jatco CVT. Yes, you heard me right. These 3,500-pound, four-door, 300 horsepower, sub-6-second behemoths were only ever sold with continuously variable transmissions. Now, hear me out, don't stop the video now. They aren't as bad as you think. I know, I've been on the internet, it's all over the internet. CVTs, in particular, Nissan CVTs have a terrible reputation. Not only are they known for being boring, rubber bandy, lifeless, they also have a terrible reputation when it comes to reliability, especially Nissan CVTs. But what if I told you those concerns are overblown and don't necessarily apply to the Nissan Maxima? Now, I'll be honest. I'll have a hard time defending CVTs when it comes to the comments about them being lifeless or boring. I personally feel like that comes down to personal preference. CVTs are definitely different than traditional automatic transmissions. Instead of having a set amount of gears, a continuously variable transmission has 2 pulleys. They're attached together by a steel belt. At low speeds, the driven pulley cones spread apart, maximizing torque at the wheels. And as the car accelerates, the pulleys, they adjust to create a higher gear ratio. And most people like the traditional experience of an automatic transmission and shifting between the gears, and CVTs just don't do that. CVTs are designed to keep the vehicle in an optimal power band and tend to hold the engine RPM until you hit a desired speed, which explains the phenomenon of consistent engine drone while hammering down on a vehicle that has a CVT. But what I can speak on is reliability. See, my girlfriend financed a 2014 Nissan Maxima, which would be the last model year of the 7th generation Maxima, in late 2019. When she financed the car, it had just over 72,000 miles on the odometer, and it's now early 2024, less than 4.5 years later, and that same car now has 84,000 more miles on it than it did when she got it. It's got 156,000 miles on the odometer. In that time period, we've replaced the CVT fluid and filter twice, and each time it costs roughly somewhere between $200 and $250. Beyond that, the car has been basically bulletproof. The car has had very little maintenance and no major failures. In the past 4.5 years and 84,000 miles, we've done the following. Roughly 17 fully synthetic oil changes, typically once every 5,000 miles or so. I'd say that probably averaged about $70 each time. It's had its accessory belt replaced twice. I believe each time that was roughly $150 at a shop. We replaced the 12-volt battery once ourselves, and we did that. We got a battery for like $110 from Napa. We've replaced the CVT fluid and filter twice at a shop, which again, anywhere between $200 and $250. And then we replaced the thermostat and thermostat housing, which is actually sold as one unit, alongside with some coolant, because as you take it off, you've got to take the top hose off and all that, and you lose some coolant. And we also got a drain pan, and we got all that for less than $90 and did that ourselves. And beyond that, the car hasn't needed anything else other than tires. It's gone through 2 sets of tires, and I want to say the tires have been about $700 for a set of 4 each time. Not fancy sport tires, just economy drive all the time tires. The thing has honestly been what I would describe as a really reliable, minimal maintenance vehicle. When she first got the car, we would work, and then once we got off work, we would go and do Uber Eats deliveries from 6 p.m. to midnight several times a week, stack up a bunch of city miles in the car, and then we, on weekends, go take 500-plus mile round trips, and the car just never had a single major issue. It's never left us stranded on the side of the road. And the poor car has been in like 4 different accidents. It's been side swipes requiring auto body repairs once. It was backed into at an Applebee's parking lot. It's been rear-ended at a stoplight. It's had its fender scraped across a utility pole. And the thing just keeps on trooping. It gets used as a dog taxi for 2 German Shepherds all the time, going, between where we live in Portland, where we live in the west side of the state, where we live in the east, more eastern or northeastern sides of the state. And the car cleans up really well. The interior cleans up really well. It's just been a really good car. With the Nissan Maxima, it's just not as bad as you'd believe it to be if you started scrolling through comments online. I mean, according to Reddit, all of Nissan's Jatco CVTs are made out of glass and will self-destruct the moment you give the car a little too much gas. But this isn't the case. The reality is, while CVTs certainly have their drawbacks, having one in your car isn't the end of the world. The 7th and 8th generation Nissan Maxima, they use a more robust CVT than what's used in a lot of the 4-cylinder vehicles like the Sentra and Altima. It's specifically designed to be able to handle higher horsepower and the increased torque that's coming from that glorious 3.5-liter V6. And just like with any other transmission, you absolutely have to maintain it. And this is just something that people neglect all the time. Nissan actually has maintenance recommendations for the 7th generation Nissan Maxima that suggest you inspect the fluid every 10,000 miles, and at minimum, that you replace the fluid and filter every 60,000 miles. Me personally, I'd probably suggest making that closer to every 30 to 50,000 miles. But if Nissan says you can get away with 60,000, I imagine you can get away with 60,000. At least they're not saying that it has lifetime fluid and never needs to be changed. And yes, there are some manufacturers that will put that right on their maintenance schedule. They will say, this car with the CVT has lifetime fluid, it's got a sealed unit, the transmission fluid never needs to be replaced. But that's so they can make it look like and report that the car has, little maintenance required to keep the car on the road. But it's just a simple fact. If you don't replace the fluid and filter in a transmission, it will eventually fail. The fluid's going to degrade, which will contribute to more heat and less lubrication, which will equal mechanical failure. So when I see these comments online where people talk about their CVTs exploding and how it was so terrible, I just question whether or not they ever maintained it, because it seems like that's something that gets neglected all the time. Everybody knows you have to get oil changes done on your car. You have to do that to keep your engine in good health. But it seems like nobody ever talks about the fact that you should also service your transmission, because let's not forget, the transmission is directly connected to the engine, and it's taking the power from your engine and transmitting that power to your wheels. And so if the fluid in that thing is dirty, if the filter's clogged, if it's getting hot, if it's not lubricated enough, you're going to have a really bad time. But if none of that has you convinced, if you go to maxima.org, which is a Nissan Maxima forum, and look up the thread Adventures in 7th Gen High Mileage Land, you will find a guy that has 400,000 miles on his 2009 Nissan Maxima SV with the original engine and original CVT, and he claims that he only changes the fluid every 75,000 miles. Every 75,000 miles, he does a CVT fluid drain and refill and replaces the filter. And so that just goes to show how far or how much further you can go in a vehicle if you maintain it. If you take care of a vehicle, it'll take care of you. I know it sounds cliche, but it's true. And I guess my bigger point here is, if you're searching for a vehicle and it seems like this might kind of be along the lines of what you want, you need a larger sedan with 4 doors that's got a good amount of power, Or if you looked into these and you've written one off because it had a CVT, or you're doing your research and wondering, should I get it as a CVT or red flag? I would honestly say it's not really something to worry about unless you absolutely hate the driving characteristics of a CVT, which I would say is valid. I think that it's a vehicle worth considering. Based off my experience with the one that my girlfriend has, I would suggest that I would even consider buying one myself. So yeah, anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I want to hear your thoughts, your comments, all that good stuff. Leave them down below. If you're interested in more content, I plan to do more videos. I've still got the, if you haven't checked it out, the series on the Mini that I bought from Copart using a auto broker. It's a really exciting story. I had to record it on a laptop mic, so it's not the greatest audio quality wise. It's a long story, but you should check that out. And I plan on making more car related content soon. So yeah, give me a subscribe and some comments and all that good stuff, and I will see you later.